What if I told you that a player's most controversial decision, the one that made him a villain to millions, was also the very act that secured his immortal legacy? In the Grand Cathedral of football, there are strikers who are ruthless, goal-scoring machines. There are those who are hulking beasts in the penalty box. And then there are the artists. Robin van Persie was without question a master of the third kind. He didn't just score goals, he composed them. Every touch of the ball was a delicate brushstroke, every shot a flash of deadly beauty. His career, like any great masterpiece, was a canvas splashed with the vibrant colors of genius, the somber shades of regret, and the defiant, bold strokes of rebellion. This is not just a biography. This is the story of a boy caught between two worlds, the world of art and the concrete jungle of the streets. It's a journey from untamed talent to true leadership, a haunting quest for glory, and finally, a peaceful, poignant return home. If you love stories of football's most complex legends, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because you won't want to miss what we have in store. Now, let's turn the pages together on the incredible life of Holland's Flying Dutchman. The port city of Rotterdam in the 1980s was a living, breathing paradox. A place of multicultural vibrancy, buzzing with energy, yet gritty and tough around the edges. It was here in the district of Kralingen that a boy named Robin van Persie grew up in a home that was anything but ordinary. His father Bob was a sculptor, a man who saw the world in shapes and forms. His mother Jose Ras was a painter and jewelry designer, a woman who dealt in color and light. From the moment he was born, Robin was immersed in art creativity and a spirit of unapologetic free-thinking. But the canvas of his early life wasn't always painted in bright hues. His parents divorced when he was just a young boy. Robin made the choice to live with his father. And it was this liberal, unstructured environment, missing a mother's gentle but firm hand, that began to forge his unique character. Bob van Persie was a fantastic father. He celebrated his son's passions, but he also gave Robin a gift that was both a blessing and a curse, almost absolute freedom. And Robin filled that vast open space with football. The cracked concrete playgrounds of Kralingen became his first stage, the weathered football, his most trusted friend. It was more than a game. It was his language, a way to channel the boundless energy of a child who simply couldn't sit still. And very quickly his talent began to shine through. He could conjure magic with the ball at his feet, a strange, beautiful fusion of slick street technique and the artistic soul he'd inherited from his parents. But hand in hand with that prodigious talent came a difficult personality. At school, Robin was a walking, talking discipline problem. He was a regular in the headmaster's office, frequently punished, often kicked out of class for his pranks and a defiant attitude that bristled at any form of authority. He couldn't stand restrictive rules. He had to do things his way. This rebellious fire followed him from the classroom onto the football pitch. He first joined the Academy of Excelsior, a small Rotterdam club. But his talent was too big for them. At the age of 16, he made the leap to the city's giant Feyenoord. At Feyenoord, the coaches and staff were caught in a constant state of awe and anxiety. They were mesmerized by his talent, but completely bewildered by his attitude. He was a rough diamond, sparkling with breathtaking potential, but with edges so sharp they could wound anyone who got too close, including himself. The boy from Kralingen, carrying both his artistic gift and his street-forged defiance, was about to step onto the biggest stage of his life. In the 2001-2002 season, at just 17 years of age, Robin van Persie was promoted to the Feyenoord first team. The air was electric with anticipation. Under the command of coach Bert van Marwijk, a man famous for his iron-fisted discipline, Feyenoord boasted a formidable squad led by established stars like the powerful striker Pierre van Hooijdonk and the clinical finisher John Dahl Thomasson. Van Persie didn't waste a second. He made his debut in February 2002 and immediately put his quality on full display: a left foot that seemed blessed by the gods, silky smooth control that made the ball look like an extension of his body, and a swaggering confidence that bordered on arrogance. At the end of that season, he was deservedly crowned the KNVB Best Young Talent. But the true pinnacle came when Feyenoord, with the young Van Persie making crucial contributions from the bench, spectacularly won the 2002 UEFA Cup, defeating a mighty Borussia Dortmund in a pulsating final in their own stadium De Kuip. For an 18-year-old, it was the stuff of dreams. He had a major European trophy in his hands and was being hailed as the future of Dutch football. His path forward seemed paved with gold. However, the beautiful picture soon began to crack. The relationship between the free-spirited Van Persie and the disciplinarian Bert van Marwijk grew increasingly toxic. Van Marwijk demanded unwavering tactical discipline and rigid adherence to his system. Van Persie was an artist who wanted to play on instinct, to paint his own pictures on the pitch. Arguments flared up on the training ground and in the dressing room. On one infamous occasion, Van Marwijk, infuriated, hauled Van Persie off the pitch and confined him to the bench after he'd flagrantly disobeyed tactical instructions during a match. The conflict reached its breaking point on the eve of the UEFA Super Cup match against the Galacticos of Real Madrid. Van Persie committed what was deemed a serious act of indiscipline. Reports suggested he'd gone too far in teasing a teammate, and Van Marwijk, without a moment's hesitation, ruthlessly dropped him from the squad. The prodigious talent was forced to watch one of the biggest games of his life, helpless from the stands. The following season, things only got worse. Van Persie signed a professional contract, but the war with his coach raged on. He found himself relegated to the reserve team, his immense talent gathering dust. His ability was undeniable, but his attitude had become an insurmountable barrier. The Feyenoord hierarchy came to a painful conclusion: they couldn't risk keeping a ticking time bomb in their dressing room. They had to sell him. It's a classic dilemma in football, isn't it? A player with generational talent, but a personality that clashes with authority. What would you do if you were the manager? Do you try to tame the rebellious spirit for the sake of the talent? Or do you cut your losses to protect the harmony of the team? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Just when his career seemed to be stalling, a professor from London made his move. Arsène Wenger, the visionary manager of Arsenal, had been tracking Van Persie for a long time. Where others saw a troublesome kid, Wenger saw something more. He saw an extraordinary talent in desperate need of polishing an artistic soul, who needed an understanding mentor, not a dictator. Wenger decided to take the gamble. In the summer of 2004, Robin van Persie moved to Arsenal for the astonishingly low fee of just $2,075 million. It was a pittance for a player of his caliber, but it was the best Feyenoord could hope for, given his expiring contract and well-documented disciplinary problems. Arriving at the hallowed grounds of Highbury, Van Persie stepped into a different dimension. He was now surrounded by living legends. Thierry Henry was at the absolute zenith of his powers, a king ruling his kingdom. His childhood idol, the non-flying Dutchman, Dennis Bergkamp, was still there weaving his quiet magic. Robert Pires and Freddie Ljungberg patrolled the wings, the beating heart of the Invincibles team that had just conquered the Premier League without a single defeat. Arsène Wenger was a master of patience. He knew he had a diamond that needed to be cut with precision, not smashed with a hammer. He didn't try to extinguish the rebellious fire inside Van Persie. Instead, he sought to channel it, to aim it at the opposition's goal. He spoke to him not as a boss, but as a father, a teacher. He patiently explained the nuances of tactics, the necessity of sacrifice for the collective, and most importantly, he illuminated a clear path for his development. Initially, Wenger deployed Van Persie on the left wing, just as he had played at Feyenoord. He had to fight for his place among superstars. But the single most important turning point of his entire career came when Wenger looked at him and saw not a winger, but a central striker. Wenger believed that with his flawless technique, his varied finishing, and his incredible footballing brain, Van Persie could become the heir to the majestic Dennis Bergkamp. The great transformation began. Van Persie became a student of the game. He watched Bergkamp learning how to find pockets of space, how to drop deep and link the play, how to deliver those killer passes that no one else could see. He studied Henry, learning the art of cool, calculated finishing under immense pressure. Slowly but surely, he evolved. The flashy, sometimes selfish winger began to fade, replaced by a complete modern striker. He became a false nine who could do it all: create for others, hold up the ball, and score goals of unbelievable quality. And yet Van Persie's path at Arsenal was never a smooth, straight line. His greatest adversary wasn't an opposing defender. It was the fragility of his own body. Injuries stalked him relentlessly. Ankle, knee, metatarsal. It was a cruel repeating cycle. Just as he would hit a scintillating run of form, just as he was starting to look unstoppable, a devastating injury would strike, sidelining him for months on end. The Arsenal faithful adored his flashes of genius, but grew to lament the brittleness of his glass legs. Through it all, Wenger's faith never wavered. He remained patient. He trusted him completely. And whenever he was fit, Van Persie repaid that faith with genuine masterpieces. The volley against Charlton Athletic in 2006, an impossible acrobatic strike from the edge of the box, was a goal Wenger himself described as the goal of a lifetime. His left-footed free kicks, whipped with ferocious pace, and pinpoint accuracy, became one of the most feared weapons in the Premier League. He was truly maturing, not just as a player, but as a man, all under the gentle guidance of his great mentor. As the legends of the Man Utd Invincibles generation gradually departed, the immense weight of Arsenal's attack settled squarely on the shoulders of Robin van Persie. He became the new icon of the club, the single greatest hope for the Gunners. In 2011, following Cesc Fabregas's emotional return to Barcelona, Wenger handed Van Persie the captain's armband. It was a profoundly proud moment, a testament to his incredible growth. The rebellious boy from Rotterdam was now the leader of the Gunners, and he responded to that sacred trust with the single greatest individual season of his entire career. The 2011-2012 season was Van Persie's magnum opus. He was an irresistible, unstoppable force of nature. For once his body held up, and he played with a devastating, beautiful lethality. He scored 30 goals in the Premier League, claiming the Golden Boot and sweeping both the PFA and FWA Player of the Year awards. He almost single-handedly carried a transitional rebuilding Arsenal side, dragging them from the obscurity of mid-table all the way into the top four with a series of spectacular, crucial goals. His goals weren't just numerous. They were works of art, each one more important and more beautiful than the last. The Arsenal fans didn't just respect him, they worshipped him. He was their Captain Fantastic. It felt like the perfect story. The love affair between the player and the club was destined for a happy ending, with him staying to lead them back to glory. But then, tragedy struck. Van Persie, now 29, felt the merciless ticking of the clock. He had been at Arsenal for 8 long years, with only a single FA Cup from 2005 to show for it. He yearned for the biggest prize, the one that had eluded him, the Premier League title. He looked at the squad around him and felt deep in his gut that the club no longer shared his burning ambition to compete for that ultimate honor. In the summer of 2012, a shockwave ripped through the football world. Van Persie released a statement announcing he would not be renewing his contract with Arsenal. In an open letter, he spoke of a difference in vision between himself and the board. But the words that truly twisted the knife in the hearts of the Gunners came later, when he tried to explain his choice. "When I have to make a difficult decision in my life, I always listened to the little boy inside of me. That little boy was screaming for Manchester United. The little boy inside had chosen Arsenal's most bitter, hated rival. In the eyes of so many fans, it was an unforgivable act of betrayal. Overnight, he went from hero to Judas. 8 years of love, of patience, of adoration evaporated in a cloud of bitterness and rage. In August 2012, Robin van Persie officially pulled on the iconic red shirt of Manchester United. He had walked into Old Trafford with one singular all-consuming purpose: to win the Premier League. And the man who welcomed him with open arms was none other than Sir Alex Ferguson, the legendary manager who had whispered in his ear and convinced him that United was the only place his dream could become reality. Sir Alex handed Van Persie the number 20 shirt, making a prophecy that would echo through history. "You," he said, "will help us win our 20th league title." And Van Persie did exactly that. He didn't just fit in, he took over. He integrated instantly, forming a partnership with Wayne Rooney that was nothing short of telepathic and utterly deadly. He brought a class, a finesse, and a clinical edge to United's attack that had been missing. He simply continued the blistering form from his final season at Arsenal. His hat-trick against Southampton early in the season, where he missed a penalty, only to score 2 dramatic late goals to seal a comeback, was a perfect demonstration of his unshakable character and burning desire. He scored in both league matches against his former club, Arsenal. At Old Trafford, he showed a measure of restraint and did not celebrate. But at the Emirates, booed and jeered relentlessly by the tens of thousands of fans who once sang his name, he scored a penalty and celebrated wildly. The season's defining moment, the goal that sealed the title and his destiny, came in a home match against Aston Villa. Van Persie scored a stunning first-half hat-trick to officially clinch Manchester United's 20th Premier League championship. The second goal of that hat-trick was a masterpiece for the ages. Wayne Rooney launched a 40-yard pass from inside his own half, and Van Persie, watching it drop over his shoulder, met the ball on the full volley. A perfect, laser-guided strike that flew into the corner of the net before the keeper could even move. It was the goal that symbolized his entire season, perfect, decisive, and breathtakingly beautiful. And then at the end of the season, in Sir Alex's final home game, an image was seared into the memory of every football fan. The Arsenal players, his former brothers-in-arms, formed a guard of honor to welcome the new champions, Manchester United, onto the pitch. Van Persie walked through that tunnel of his former teammates, his face a complex mask of triumph and perhaps a hint of melancholy. He had done it. He had achieved his goal. The decision to leave, however controversial, had been justified with silverware. These moments of players reaching their absolute peak or making career-defining moves are what make football so special. If you enjoy diving deep into the stories of legends like this, make sure you're subscribed to Legends of Football League so you never miss an episode. We have so many more incredible journeys to share. But Van Persie's euphoria was tragically short-lived. At the end of that triumphant season, Sir Alex Ferguson, the father figure who had brought him to Old Trafford, announced his retirement. The man who had promised him the world was gone. The little boy inside Van Persie was suddenly lost and alone. Under new managers David Moyes and later his compatriot Louis van Gaal van Persie was a shadow of his former self. The familiar curse of injuries returned, his form dipped, and the magic began to fade. He would only spend 3 seasons at Old Trafford, but that first glorious title-winning season remains the brightest pinnacle of his entire career. Having fallen out of favor with Louis van Gaal van Persie, left Manchester United in the summer of 2015. He embarked on a new journey in a new country, putting on the famous yellow and blue stripes of Fenerbahce in Turkey. In the passionate cauldron of Istanbul, he still produced moments of pure genius, but the consistency of his peak years was gone. Yet one truly memorable moment stood out. Fenerbahce were drawn against his childhood club Feyenoord in the Europa League. Van Persie scored against his old team at their home ground, De Kuip, but instead of celebrating, he simply stood still. And in a remarkable display of respect and love, the entire stadium, instead of booing him, rose to their feet and gave their former son a thunderous, heartfelt ovation. It was a beautiful moment of forgiveness, a sign of the deep respect they still held for his incredible talent. After 3 years in Turkey at the age of 34, an age where most players would retire or seek a final paycheck in a less demanding league, Van Persie made a decision driven purely by his heart. He chose to go home. The circle needed to be closed. Speaking of great players, their stories are endless. Is there a legend of the game whose story you're desperate for us to tell? Let us know in the comments below. We're always looking for our next great adventure. In January 2018, 14 years after he had left, in a cloud of controversy, Robin van Persie officially re-signed with Feyenoord. The rebellious, petulant boy of yesterday returned as a mature man, a living legend. This reunion wasn't about money or fame. It was about ending his career right where it all began, in the city that made him. His return was met with a wave of warmth and affection. He was no longer the undisputed star, but his experience, his class, and his leadership were priceless assets for the young players in the squad. And in 2018, he won the KNVB Cup with Feyenoord, a deeply meaningful trophy for him and for the club that had first nurtured his talent. He played his final professional season, 2018 to 2019, with a visible, infectious joy. You could see he was savoring every last moment on the pitch. Still scoring sublime goals, still inspiring the next generation. In his final match at a packed and emotional d'équipe, he was given a guard of honor by both his teammates and his opponents, a beautiful and fitting tribute to an extraordinary career. And the story has an even more beautiful postscript. His son, Shaquille Van Persie, is now following in his father's famous footsteps and is considered a bright talent in the very same Feyenoord academy. The great circle of football continues. So when the final whistle blows, what is the legacy of Robin van Persie? He will forever be remembered as one of the most technically complete, elegant, and exquisite finishers of his generation. That left foot was a registered treasure. He could score from any angle with any part of his foot in ways that nobody else could even imagine. He will be remembered for his collection of iconic, jaw-dropping moments. The impossible volley against Charlton, the title-winning volley against Aston Villa. And of course, the goal that defied physics and gave him his eternal nickname, the flying header against Spain at the 2014 World Cup. That goal, the Flying Dutchman, was everything Van Persie was. Audacious, technically perfect, breathtakingly beautiful, and utterly unpredictable. It became one of the most iconic images in the entire history of the World Cup. Of course, his legacy is also forever tied to controversy. That seismic decision to leave Arsenal for Manchester United will always divide opinion. To some, he remains a traitor, a Judas who broke their hearts. To others, he was simply a professional with a ferocious hunger to win, who made the choice he had to make. But perhaps the greatest legacy of Robin van Persie is the story of his own evolution. From a rebellious boy who refused to bow to any rule, he learned to become a captain, a leader, and a mentor. He traveled a long and winding road from the streets of Rotterdam through the grandest stages of London and Manchester, only to find true peace upon returning home. He was a true artist on the football pitch, one who painted masterpieces with a ball, leaving fans all over the world with indelible memories of a unique, unforgettable talent. Robin van Persie, the Flying Dutchman, will forever hold a special place in the hearts of all who love the beautiful game. And that's where this incredible football story concludes. What a journey, right? I'm so eager to hear your thoughts. What moment stood out to you the most? Did his controversial decision change how you saw him? Please share all your opinions, your favorite moments, and any questions you have in the comments below. I truly love reading them and building this amazing football community with all of you.